Hi. It seems you can't read the newspaper anymore or watch TV anymore without feeling a little depressed. Everything in this country seems to be coming unglued. And there was a TV program a few years ago where the actor opened the window and shouted out, "I can't take it anymore." Well, I can't take this anymore. I can't take watching the greatest nation in the world disintegrate faster and faster. So I thought I would like to do something about it. On a bi-weekly program here on Channel 18, I'm going to discuss some of the things I see in the newspaper and some of the things I see in magazines and maybe on TV. And the reason for that is we no longer have any common sense. And Mark Twain, who was a Connecticut resident, as you know, once said, "The most uncommon thing in the world is common sense." And I agree with that, because so many of these problems have a common sense solution. So I'm going to name the program Common Sense. And if you would like to send me any messages, then what I did was set up a site called commonsensebruce@gmail.com. So you can text me any of your thoughts, good or bad, and I would love to read them. So I may ramble on a bit. I may go off from one subject to another subject. So you may want to get the kids out of the room. The main reason for this program is that the Democrats or the Republicans no longer represent the American people. They all represent special interest groups. So become an independent voter and vote on the issues, and no longer belong to the herd mentality of either Democrats or Republicans. I do have a little dyslexia, so I may stumble on some words, and just bear with me. So I decided that the program should probably have some goals. And I've come up with 6 goals, and I'm going to tell you what the 6 goals are. But once every 2 weeks, I'm going to take one of the goals and amplify them. So here are the 6 goals. The first thing, for this country to survive, it needs to change. And there was a commentator that once said, for the Russian Empire to survive, it has to become freer. And for the American country to survive, it has to lose some freedoms. And that may sound a little scary at first, but there is some common sense to it. So let me give you the 6 things that I thought we need to do as a nation to pull ourselves out of where we're going, and which we are going very quickly. The first one is term limits. The president has 8 years of term limits, and when the founding fathers put together the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they had no idea that this big giant country would be governed by a federal bureaucracy that you can't fire, you can't change, and it goes on and on and on. So if the president has term limits of 8 years, then so should the Congress. I'm tired of seeing people retiring from the Congress that are 85 years old. What does an 85-year-old person understand of what a 25-year-old person is going through? So the first thing we need to do is term limits. So I would like to have you think about what's going on here. A lot of people talk about the press is biased, and they really are. This is the latest issue of Connecticut Magazine. It's a great magazine. I've been a subscriber for 20 years. And here's an ad that talks about following the money. And it talks about the super PACs that are throwing huge amounts of money in both the Connecticut Republican Party and in the Democratic Party. But notice that the only person you see here is a Republican. So if the average person is looking at that and reads the headlines and says, oh, well, there's those Republicans again spending all kinds of money. But you see, this is what really bothers me. Every time you pick up something in Connecticut, it's against the Republicans and for the Democrats. This state, has had a tremendous tax increase, the biggest tax increase in our history. And Governor Malloy right now gets up and says, well, I balanced the budget. He didn't balance the budget. He taxed you $1.5 billion. but that was not enough money. So he then went out and borrowed $400 million more dollars against the state of Connecticut to put into the budget. So how is he balancing the budget? Well, he may have balanced the budget because the money was there, but he hit us for $1.5 billion, and then he went out and borrowed more money. Do you know the state of Connecticut has one of the highest ratios of debts per population than any state in the country? We owe a ton of money, and the jobs are leaving this state left and right. There was a survey that said that 50% of Connecticut people would love to leave the state. Well, you would love to leave the state if you could sell your house. You're driving down the street, you see a nice house on the corner. First thing you do is you see for sale. So well, that's a nice house. You know, I hope he gets what he wants. So then 2 months go by, and then you see another sign, for sale, price reduced. So then we'd say, well, he didn't get his money. And then you go by another month later, and you see for sale by owner. Wow, that breaks my heart. Because here's the middle class family, struggled all their life to do the right thing, to pay their taxes, to involve themselves in the community, to work a good job, to pay off their house, and now they can't sell it. Why can't they sell it? Well, why would you want to move to Connecticut? Unless you have a lot of money and maybe live in Fairfield County. But as a middle class person, you can't survive here anymore. Every time you turn around, someone's hitting you for more and more money. And we need to change all this. And if the average, I read an article the other day that said 55% of Americans over 50 years of age only have $40,000 in their 401 or their IRA. $40,000? You can't even buy a car for $40,000 anymore. How is someone going to survive on $40,000? So most people, what they did is they kept their house. They thought, well, when I go to sell my house, I could sell it for $300,000-$400,000, add it to the $40,000 or $50,000 I have, and I'll be able to retire. Well, maybe you retire down in North Carolina or some other, or New Hampshire, where the state doesn't have its hands in your pockets every 5 minutes. But you're not going to retire in Connecticut on Social Security and $40,000, or if you now can only sell your house for $200,000, wow, what are you going to do? Well, when Franklin Roosevelt put together the Social Security Trust Fund, he said it was a three-legged stool. One leg was your salary and savings. The other leg would put a hold on the Connecticut state spending. So we need to find a way to bring companies back to Connecticut and stop the exodus of companies leaving Connecticut. The problem is, as I said before, we have a one-party rule. The Democrats have controlled this state for years, and we are in huge financial hole, and we need to find a way to get out of that. And then the way to get out of it is not taxing the middle class higher and higher. It's only destroying the state more and more. So what we need to do is think, when we go to vote, who are we voting for? Okay, a lot of people don't like Foley. Why? Well, because he has a yacht and he lives in a big house in Greenwich, and he was a successful businessman. And the ads that the Democrats are portraying are showing, look what he did. He closed this mill down in the Carolinas, and he did this and he did that. He didn't close the mills in the Carolinas. I'll tell you who closed the mills in the Carolinas and the rest of the country was Bill Clinton. And you just don't quite understand that when he signed the free trade agreement, what that really meant, as Ross Perot said in the national debate, if you sign that piece of paper, you're going to hear a sucking sound, and it's going to be all the jobs going to China. And guess what happened? All the jobs went to China. Now, why is that? Well, let's say you're producing a telephone here in the United States, and that telephone costs $40. And when you did away with the free trade agreement, that allowed a Chinese person making $2 a day to produce this telephone. And that telephone is shipped to Connecticut. You walk into a store, and here's the American-made telephone for $40, and here's the same telephone from China for $30. Now we all want to make believe that we're going to look and turn it over and see where it's made and we're going to buy the American. That doesn't happen. What happens is that you buy the phone that's equal in quality, but you buy it at the lower price. So the minute Bill Clinton, the Democratic Party, wanted to equalize the whole world, they signed the free trade agreement. And what did it do? It only did one thing. It took the standard of living in America and brought it down this way, and it took the standard of living in China and brought it this way. So when the Democrats run around and scream about the middle class, what are they screaming about? They're screaming about who's destroying jobs. You destroyed the jobs. You signed the free trade agreement. You, Bill Clinton, Democratic President of the United States, signed that agreement. And of course, we don't want to talk about the Clintons too much because they left the White House and they were broke. They bought two houses in Chappaqua, New York, but they were broke. Well, now the Clintons are worth $100 million. They're not broke anymore. And why is that? Well, for the first time ever, an ex-president is getting paid to give speeches. The Japanese, I think, paid Bill $2 million for one speech. So the Clintons aren't broke anymore, but you're broke. You lost your job. Your kid can't find a job, and it's because all the jobs are in China. So why did we destroy the job manufacturing base of the United States? To make the Chinese happy? You think anybody in the world cares about America? This is the greatest country that ever came out of mankind. It took almost 2,500 years for Western civilization to produce something like America. When it's gone, folks, it's gone. It's all over. So when we sit down and talk about who we're going to vote for, start thinking about some issues. Start thinking about how do we attract more jobs to Connecticut? We certainly don't attract them by taxing them to death. How do we get our families to come back into Connecticut to find a job? Well, the only employer in Connecticut, the largest employer in Connecticut, you ready for this? Is the state of Connecticut. 55,000 state employees that you can't fire. Here's a good example. Remember when the hurricane went through and the government sent relief funds and everybody in the state who had hurricane damage could sign up? And then we had the 100 state employees who had no hurricane damage signed up for the money? And some of them got as much as $1,000. And Mr. Malloy said, oh, we can't, no, this is wrong, we can't do this. Well, about 2 weeks ago in the newspaper, the end of the hearings came, and they found 2 state employees they fired. The other 98 they didn't fire, even though they stole the money also. But the state bureaucratic manager who was put in charge of it said, well, you know, they only stole less than $1,000. Less than $1,000? I worked for a big corporation in America. If you stole money, maybe you lasted 20 minutes, enough time to get your coat on before they escorted you out of the building. 100 state employees falsifying receipts to steal money from a hurricane, and all 100 of them were not fired? If you looked at the number of state employees at 53,000, we have the highest ratio of state employees to population. We have so many state employees, I don't know what they do for a living. But I do know, when I had state contracts to negotiate, I used to walk through some of those big buildings up in Hartford. It was a beautiful thing to see. You talk around the water cooler, you couldn't even see the water cooler. There was always 30 people talking. Some people would be sleeping on the desk. Some people would be reading the newspaper. What? How long would that last in my corporation? Not very long. So we have all of these state employees with these fantastic pensions. Do you know our pension fund is not even fully funded? And how do the state employees negotiate pensions? They negotiate a rate of return in their pension that will never happen. The whole 150-year stock market has returned on average 7%. Do you know a lot of state pensions are based on 8, 9, 10% return? No one can make that money. So when the pensions are not fully funded, what do? They turn around and come back and tax you more money. It's the same thing with the U.S. mail service. everybody hears the mail service is going broke. It's $15 billion in the hole. But no one tells you the reason it's going broke is because the mailmen have the best pension of any company anywhere in the world. That's why it's going broke. Not because the letters are not making any money. It's because the drag on the pension is extraordinary. So, all right. So let's think about how are we going to change Connecticut. I really think that you should endorse Foley. I think he's a businessman, and I think he'll bring more businesses to Connecticut, which will employ more people, which will give more people jobs. As far as the state Senate race, do we really need another Kennedy? Are you not fed up with the whole Kennedys? I'm fed up with the Kennedys. I'm fed up with the Bushes. I'm fed up with the Clintons. Who are these people? We did away with kings and queens, 250 years ago. Why are we constantly voting people from one family? There's 330 million people in America, and this is the only people we can find. It's at the point now that people are it's becoming, as Mr. Kennedy said in his news release, the family business. So now we have people that's all they do for a living is the whole families. We're gonna, maybe we get grandma and grandpa in there and have him run. I'm fed up with special interest groups. I'm fed up with lobbyists, and I'm fed up with this idea that because you have a name, that makes you the candidate for a political party. So when we're thinking about this, I don't need another Kennedy. I got fed up with Robert Kennedy and John Kennedy and Ted Kennedy and all of this. Enough of this. Let's vote in someone that we can think at least came up through the ranks. Think about it this way. I just have a son that's a senior in Boston College. $57,000 a year. Wow, that's a lot of money. And of course, I can't get any kind of scholarships, so and I make too much money to get any help, so I have to pay the $57,000, as a lot of you in the middle class have to do. How long does you think it takes for Ted Kennedy Jr. to write a check from the Kennedy Trust Fund to pay for his kid's education? He doesn't care about what the taxes are because he just goes to the trust fund, and the trust fund gives him the money. So how is he going to appreciate people working 2 jobs and clipping coupons and trying to stay in this state? He has no idea. He never would have an idea. It's like Obama. Obama never had a job in his life. How can we elect people that have no idea what the common person goes through? And this show is designed to talk to the common person. So before you go into the election booth on Tuesday, think about the free trade agreement that wiped out all of the American manufacturing jobs. Think of Malloy with the $1.5 billion and then going out and borrowing another $300 or $400 million on top of that, because there's more of that to come, because the budget is not in balance when you borrow money. And think of a local race for the state Senate between 2 candidates, one that comes from a trust fund family who has everything handed to them, and another person that works hard to achieve what they need to have achieved in their life. So that's about it. I've rambled on. I've talked about a lot of different things, and I would like some feedback. But the one thing that you have to remember. Oh, wait a minute. Hello. No, what do you mean? I signed up for the do not call list. I signed up 5 times for it. I don't care you change your name. I'm tired of these phone calls on Saturdays and Sundays and leave me alone. Good God. It never ends. But of course, they passed the do not call and you signed up 15 times for it, but they seem to call. Why is that? Because any bureaucracy only cares about itself. They don't care about you. And none of the elected officials in this country care about the common person anymore. So get off the couch, stop doing what you're doing, get involved. And if you would like to make some comments, text me. at commonsensebruce@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. But I'll be back in another 2 weeks, and we'll discuss some other things in the paper, because by then the elections will be over. And last night I attended a lecture in New York City with General Petraeus, one of the finest American generals that we've ever had. And what he has to say about the Middle East is absolutely scary. But we'll talk about that next time. Stay tuned. Nice to have you listen to what I've said. Thank you.